When I first started playing Dungeons and Dragons, back when I was about 10 years old, been playing for about 2 years. Yes, 10 years old, started playing when I was 8. I followed a treasure map that was written in crayon. That was how it was described to me. I didn't think twice about it. And we followed it. And we ended up falling directly into a pit trap laid by goblins. That was my first encounter with goblins, and ever since then, I've been trying to kill my players with goblins. So let's talk about how to kill your players with goblins. In Dungeons & Dragons, specifically 5th edition, goblins can be nightmares. But we need to look a little bit closer at their stat block because they're not as squishy as you think they are. Their AC is 15. Now, they may only have 7 hit points, but for a low 1/4 CR monster, that's a really high AC. They're hard to hit, meaning a fighter will actually miss about 50% of the time. A ranged person will still miss about 50% of the time. And they have just enough hit points where if we don't use a resource, we may not actually kill them on the first strike. All of those are very probable scenarios. But it's what the goblin has that make it special. So we have to look at its special ability. The ability to disengage. As a bonus action, it can move itself out of combat and then still get its full movement. When we look at this, it gives us a whole new ways on how to kill our players by using goblins. We utilize the entire stat block, the hard to hit, the ability to disengage, and the ability to hide in plain sight. So, goblins can be used to kill your players in a lot of ways. If you're not using your goblins to do ambush tactics, you're doing it wrong. Goblins can be used whatever way you want them, but goblins are designed to be ambush attackers. They have a nimble escape. They're not going to stand toe-to-toe with your melee class. They have disengage as an option. They have the ability to hide in every turn as an action on their turn. All they got to do is get behind something and hide, and you no longer can see them. This is what goblins should be doing, and you should be playing them as such when tactics are a thing on the table. If your players are encountering goblins and you have a veteran group of party, you should be using these things to make the encounter more difficult. You don't have to necessarily throw more goblins at a party to make them harder. Goblins pop up, they shoot the arrows, they duck behind, and they hide. We do it all the time as players. Goblins can do it too. Remember, goblins have disengage and the ability to hide on their turn and a high AC for a reason. They're ambush predators or ambush creatures. They, as groups, like to ambush things. So use them as such. You'll be amazed at how difficult and fun a goblin counter can be. It doesn't need to be said with goblins in D&D, but overwhelming numbers. A lot of dungeon masters don't like to use goblins in overwhelming numbers because it becomes very complicated to keep track of. Remember something. Goblins have a fairly decent AC, an AC of 15, which means they can be hit. If you're doing this combat with a higher level party, make them minions, meaning that yes, when I hit a goblin, it dies on the first round. They have a maximum of 7 hit points. So if a goblin takes 5 hit points, 1d4 plus 3, minimum of 4, you do half a goblin's health in one hit, it's going to run away. So whether it drops to the floor, dies, or runs away, remember, goblins they're there for self-preservation too. They're not mindless zombie creatures. You hit them, you knock half their health up, man, they're gone. They're not designed to be such a brute force attacker. They're hit and run. So treat them as such. Use lots of numbers, but make keeping track of them easy. This is a great way to use tactics with your goblins, but at the same time, make it so you don't have to keep track of every single hit point. Overwhelming numbers with goblins makes for a fun encounter as long as you as the dungeon master don't have to keep track of 1,000 different hit points. Food for thought. Goblins in D&D should be used cunning traps. I know that falls more on kobolds, but think about the fact that a goblin can disengage, they can hide, they can move, and they have a good AC. They're going to put traps in front of you and the party. I think of them as gremlins and Ewoks combined, right? That's a goblin. They're going to have traps, and they're going to make the party come to them. They're never going to stand toe-to-toe. They're never going to run up and rush a party, but they will trap the living daylights out of it. They will even bait parties members into falling into a trap as they try to get to them. This is where perception checks come in. This makes a really basic encounter a whole lot of fun when you have pit traps littered all over the place in the forest that goblins are attacking. Most of the time, we put goblins in caves. Put them in the woods! They're hiding behind trees. They're small creatures. Goblin could be hiding behind that tree right there. It's not. No, it's not. Remember, using traps with goblins can be fun, but use traps that aren't debilitating and killing. pit traps are good, maybe a spike trap, maybe a net trap that lifts people out of the thorn. Maybe the goblins in your world are the slavers. And so they use traps. Their goal is not to kill, their goal is to subdue, and giving the party a chance to escape. If you hit them with overwhelming numbers and traps, maybe they use nets. There's so many fun things you can do when you incorporate traps and goblins and ambush and the woods all together. If you're trying to kill your players with goblins, use the environment. Remember, goblins are resourceful creatures. They are not mindless. They are not zombies. They have the ability to attack. They are cunning. Use the environment. The darkness. Remember, just because someone has dark vision does not mean they can see everything. In fact, they have disadvantage on things on visibility stealth checks if someone's stealthing in a dark area. If it's pitch black, that's non-dim light, the goblins have the ability to move inside that light. They have perception as well. So all the goblins have to do is set up some kind of early warning system, such as maybe gravel that goes crunch, crunch when someone walks down on it. Then the goblins have the ability to move beside the cave. The goblins have prepared their territory for you to come into it, so they have the advantage. Make sure the goblins have the advantage. That doesn't mean they have advantage on rolls. It means the environment, the area is strategized for the goblins. Goblins are not just running up and attacking people. They're using the trees for ambushing. They're using the darkness to hide themselves where they know where things are based upon the sound of the center paths. They're running on walkways that they've built. They're in pitfall traps below things. They've got tunnels that are only a small creature can get into. If a medium-sized creature tries to get, they move at basically difficult terrain through a tunnel that's smaller, made for goblins, but your halfling can keep track of them. Utilize the environment to give the goblins an advantage. Now the party, if they're smart, may pull back and then say, okay, should we go down this way, right? But the goblins aren't going to chase the party. The goblins are going to let the party come to them. The thing is, the goblins may not want to fight the party. That may not want them. This may be the shortest path through the mountain, the Mines Moria, but done differently, with the party trying to get somewhere going through goblin territory. That territory is set up in goblin favor. If they're going through the woods, you can have woodland goblins, you have cliff goblins, you can have hill goblins, you can have city goblins, sewer goblins. Goblins can be anywhere, and using them as a stat block can be a lot of fun. But remember, their stat block is designed higher AC, 15, not low hit points. They want to survive, they're cunning, they can disengage, and they can hide. Keep those things in mind, and you can make some amazing encounters when it comes to goblins. So, use goblins to kill your party creatively, or at least have amazing challenges. It's not necessarily about winning, it's about giving your players something different than they've countered before. Food for thought. And as always, guys, like, comment, subscribe. I would love to hear how you use goblins tactically to create an amazing, engaging challenge. Comment below as a player, as a dungeon master, let us know. And as always, we will see you next time.